Hello, welcome once again. You're welcome to my channel, Prime Solutions with Chris, and today we'll be following up or talking about the second stage of planning when it comes to moving to Canada for studies, particularly for graduate students. And this is actually one of the things we will do last before we open up the application and then start the process of either sending hard copy applications, which is no longer in vogue, I would say, but sending the electronic application via our emails. But we talked about the last video. We talked about the first stage of planning. There I mentioned briefly about, of course, undergraduate education. If you want to have that here in Canada, how your first degree, the subjects you took in high school can basically inform your first degree here, and about how so many other factors also can inform the decision you make when it comes to applying for graduate studies. We talked about, of course, following the same path of your first degree towards your second degree. We talked also about how your years of work experience can influence the choice of second degree or third degree you want to have. We talked about also how cost can also be a factor to consider, but we didn't really dwell so much on that because we know there are so many other options when it comes to funding or cost, which we will really create a very good elaborate video to discuss that. We also talked about how you can choose to move away from your first degree or even your work experience and chose another path entirely. And we talked about factors that you need to put into consideration while making the choices. And if you've not seen that video, you can watch the previous video where the first stage of planning for graduate education in Canada, and this is actually the second stage of planning that we are discussing today. So you may want to see that video to understand what we talked about there. And again, if you've not subscribed to my channel, this is a good time to do so. Subscribe to the channel, and the video will keep coming, and we will talk about strategically how we can work smart to make coming to Canada a reality as quickly as possible, than how we can work so hard but still the mission wasn't accomplished. The question is, do you want to work smart or do you want to work hard? I worked smart, even with my mistakes before coming here. I worked smart enough, and I'm hoping that with our conversation and things, knowledge I'll be dishing out on this channel, you can be able to work smart and make your dream of coming to Canada for studies or for stay a reality as quickly as possible, particularly even in this year. So today we will focus on second stage of planning for studies in Canada, particularly for graduate education. And like you guys know, I always say I am not scripted at all. I only have some points jotted out in my, some bullet points jotted out in my laptop, and I have some board I want to use to take some notes while I'm talking if I have to. Otherwise, I'm not scripted. I'm speaking from experience, and I'm speaking from research I've made, and of course with some conversations with professors and those that actually make these decisions when it comes to assessing application or reviewing applications, to know who will have this seat and who will not have this seat in this program or in this class. So yes, second stage of planning for graduate education in Canada. What are the things you will want to consider when it comes to that? Again, briefly, we talked about the initial stage, which again involved part of self-planning, asking myself, where do I proceed? What do I want? But in this second stage, another thing we'll have to ask ourselves is, particularly for graduate education, is which area of interest do I really want to undertake? In this case, when you are taking most master's courses, I would say, not all of them are research based. Therefore, if you want to take a research-based master's, another question you want to ask yourself at the planning stage is, what area of interest should I pick or should inform my decision? Again, remember, before doing this, you must have asked yourself, done your research, and plan and say, yes, this is the program I want to take, or these are the options I have in terms of programs that I want to undertake for my graduate education. But that is not enough. That you're able to find or have those options down, that these are the options I have when it comes to graduate education, is not enough to get you the admission. Another important factor you have to ask yourself, and again answer the question, is, what area of interest should I be talking about? What interests me more? If I'm going to undertake a research-based master's, what area of interest? What kind of research should I undertake? What will be my topic? What is my area of interest? What will I be writing about? Asking yourself these questions can go a long way to help you make that decision. And again, to be able to make this decision for yourself, you'll probably ask yourself, if you have had some years of work experience, you'll probably ask yourself, okay, yeah, these are my years of experience and these are the things I've done. So if my work will be a great influence on my choice of graduate education, should that also be a great influence on my research? If that's going to be a great influence on your research, you probably will start looking for specific areas of interest or topic in your work area. Because if you won't necessarily call yourself a specialist there yet, but at least you've had some substantial knowledge and information that can possibly help you to make that choice. So, but for example, myself, before I left Nigeria to Norway, where I took my Master of Philosophy, you guys know already, like I've said in my first video here, my first degree was in history, even though I graduated from History and National Studies department. But one thing was clear, at that point in time, I was already making the choice of what can influence my choice of master's degree eventually if I have to leave this country. I felt, okay, yeah, I want to look at conflict. I want to look at history of conflict. I want to look at history of peace in the world. But at the same time, I also know that I can't look at everything at the same time. So even at that periphery stage where I wasn't sure yet how to conduct myself when it comes to picking a research topic and writing deeply on that, I was able to know that, yes, conflict and peace is my interest. So the next thing I did was to choose Arab-Israeli conflict, which was my topic during my project, what we call projects during my undergraduate years. I mean, in Nigerian universities, particularly at the undergraduate level, we call it project. And my project was about 90 pages, and in it I tackled Arab-Israeli conflict. I think between 1967 and 2000, I can't remember the specific years, which was actually big. Looking at it now, it's actually a very big project I covered during my undergraduate years, which shouldn't be. I would say that which shouldn't be. But again, that will tell you exactly I was already forming a perspective, or I've had a clear knowledge of the direction I want to go towards my graduate education. Of course, when I started working, I worked briefly in the area of as a journalist, and I was able to, present some topics, write about some topics in that area. So when it was time for my to apply for my graduate education, I was basically looking for topic or programs around peace and conflict. It doesn't matter if it's called international peace, it doesn't matter if it's called peace study, it doesn't matter if it's called anything around peace and conflict was what I was looking for. So again, my choice, my first degree, but more importantly, my project and my work influenced my choice of graduate education. My Master of Philosophy was in Peace and Conflict Transformation at the University of Tromsø, Norway. It didn't just come out of a blue. I planned for it. I knew I wanted something in that area. So when it was time to start exploring places to go for graduate education, what was more important to me was the country and funding, but not the choice of programs. I've already had that. I don't know what it will be called yet, but I know it has to be around peace and conflict. So that is it. So it's up to you also to ask yourself, will my project or my undergraduate education or my job influence my choice of graduate studies? The choice is yours to make, but the earlier you start thinking about that before you go to your computer, laptop and start applying for graduate education, the better for you. So that is one way you can really make it really work easy for you and increase your chances of getting admission and even funding added to that. Okay, and also when you have considered your area of interest, you have noted it down, you know what influenced it. The next question, which is really important, we'll talk about is, if I'm thinking of Canada, how do I begin to search for schools that offer this subject or that has program around this area? You can do a general search. You can go to do for university to university search. We all know how to use Google. You can actually type, for example, schools in Canada that offers peace and conflict programs. It doesn't have to be that specific title, but every school that offers something close to peace and conflict, if it hits the search button, you will most likely hit those schools. Then you have limited your search from thousands of universities and colleges available here to a very manageable number of schools you want to look at. Then you can browse more directly and get to know exactly what are this is what this school calls this program, this is what this school calls this program. But if you go through the programs in all the schools, you realize they are virtually talking about the same thing or similar things, but with different program titles. That will be what will make the difference. Then, of course, the next thing when you have searched the schools and you're now very sure these are the school that has these programs close to what I'm looking for, then you are sure of the need to, do more search, do more research. In this case, digging more deep specifically to get to know more facts. I'm not even talking about the requirements in this case. The requirement will be understanding requirement for your graduate education, like the documents you need to submit will be a different topic entirely. But what we are concerned about when it comes to school now is to understand how best to search out the schools you want to attend or potentially want to apply to when it comes to this second stage of planning. So when you get to this stage when you are able to streamline the number of schools you are looking at, the next thing you want to ask yourself is, okay, yeah, these are the schools that offer the research study I'm interested in, but that's not enough. What many of us don't get to understand is this, that even when some schools doesn't ask you to secure a supervisor before you apply for your graduate program, it is essential that, and very, very important, that you establish some form of communication with some faculties, call them professors, but teachers in that particular program. Is very important. Some schools will be silent on that. You don't need to do that. Just send in your application. We will look around our faculties to get to know who is interested in your topic when you are submitting your research topic, your research writing or statement of interest. But even when the schools don't ask you to do that, it will be very, very helpful that you make that choice to engage some faculties in that department or program who seems to have interest in that topic, on that topic. The good thing about this part of the world is once you try to search for professors in a particular program, it is not just the name or the contact that will appear. The schools will most likely add this their research area to get to tell you these are the things they are interested in these are their research interests. They may not add the funding they have. Some schools do add the funding those professors have. Some don't add that. But again, when we talk about funding, we'll explore these areas. But once you click on some on the schools and then go straight to the faculties or the professors in that program, get to know their research interest. If you see some professors and their research interest seems to match what you want to do, start conversation with them. When you are not talking about, you are close to starting your application, but don't start the application yet. But start your conversation with them. Get to know how your topic interests them. Get to know if they are even interested in the first place. If they are interested and there seems to be some refining that needs to happen, they can advise you, because in some cases they will actually some professors that have the time will tell you, can you send me a brief writing on your area of your interest. They will look at it and tell you, okay, this is what I'm interested in. I think I'm not sure of this area. It's up to you to decide, okay, if this professor is interested in on this topic, after some back and forth emails, but seems not to be interested in this part of my area, in this part of my interest, am I willing to let go that area and then focus on what this professor wants? Because one, it seems he's available to even have a look at my topic, means that most likely he's available to take me on if I happen to get the admission. Then make that choice and move from there. What that is going to do eventually is, when you are sending in your application, you will eventually have to somehow, whether in your letter of motivation or your statement of interest, somehow mention that you have been in touch with this professor and you have had this communication, and he seems to be very much interested in this. What they will do is, by the time they are processing your application, they will get in touch with that professor and want to know, have you had some conversation with this potential student? If the answer is yes, that increases your chance of getting the admission. So regardless of if some schools will tell you, make sure you seek a supervisor before you apply, or they don't say that, please look for a supervisor. I'll use myself as an example again. Before coming here for my master's in justice, I had to start my conversation with a professor while I was in Norway. What I wanted to look at was oil conflict in Alberta and in Nigeria. Try to compare both of them. But during my conversation, the professor was like, that would be too big, too broad for a master's thesis. So you have to choose one. If you want to choose to look at the oil sand in Canada, that's call it oil exploration in Canada and the environmental devastation in Alberta, fine. Don't compare both. It will be too broad of a topic for a master's thesis. And I had to make a choice. I've already written extensively on oil exploration in Niger Delta, Nigeria, and the conflicts. Now I want to have another view of oil exploration and conflicts in a developed country. So I chose to look at oil exploration in Canada, in a First Nation community in Canada. The impact of oil exploration on a First Nation community in Alberta, Canada. That was, I had this established even before I sent in my application. So that kind of influenced how I was able to get the admission. So before I even come here to my studies, that also influenced the fact that before I came here, I already have a job tied to my program already waiting for me. So that could also be you. I know we need to also talk about cost. Cost is also important. You have to look at do I have what it takes to in terms of cost to fund myself in this program. But I always do say, there are options when it comes to costs. That shouldn't be the first thing you need to consider. Establish, plan, get to this second stage of planning first. Understand the right things to do them. And then when it gets to the point of funding or cost, you will get to know exactly what are your options. And like I said, I will talk about funding in a different another different video entirely, to explore all areas, all options open for funding there, and then you will begin to understand that, look, if I'm thinking of coming to Canada to study, the first thing I should think about is not funding. The first thing I should think about is to engage in my first stage of planning, asking myself the right questions. Engage myself in the second stage of planning, asking myself the right questions. And I've made video on these two topics. By the time you're able to watch this video and understand things I've said and put that into work, you will most likely see yourself succeeding very, very well when it comes to applying for graduate studies in Canada. So hopefully we'll talk about this in the next topic, and going forward I will get very, very specific with different topics that can really 100% enhance your choices or your chances of getting admission with funding in Canada. Many people have done it. I did it myself. Like I've shown you guys, before coming here, I have a job waiting for me, a job tied to my program. But even before I finished my program, I won about 10 different scholarships and held more than 25 student positions, which again, when I'm talking about funding, I will provide you, I will show you guys the letter of appointments. I will only redact my student ID, but you will see all the letters of appointments and the dates for you guys to see, yes, it is doable and you can achieve that even while you're still thinking of what program or what should I do, how do I get to Canada for study, and what are my options. This channel will provide you those options you need. So remember, if you have not subscribed to my channel, this is the right time to do so. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification button, because this channel will provide you all the information you need to make that right choice to come to Canada. Going forward, like I said, there will be very specific topics we'll talk about that will treat each section and help you to understand, yes, I am making the right choice when it comes to Canada. But making the right choice, like I said, start from planning. Your first stage of planning and your second stage of planning before you hit that application button on your laptop. So I will see you guys again on my next video. Before then, spread the news, invite your friends to like my page, my channel, and we'll do a lot of good things here to help many of you move to Canada for studies and have a wonderful career. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video.